Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1076B, and today's date is September 15th, 2016, and the title of the episode is, The U.S. Government is Prepared and Ready. It's almost go time. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, as the economy continually deteriorates, it's getting harder and harder for people to get health insurance. Of course, Obama came out and told us it was going to be easier, affordable. Well, everything that he said is completely opposite. Because the average cost of health coverage today offered by employers pushed above $18,000 for a family plan this year. Annual premium costs rose about 3% to $18,142 for an employer family plan in 2016. From $17,545 last year. And we can see right now, those individuals who go onto Obamacare, those individuals who are looking for a plan, it is becoming very, very expensive. And many people are opting to take the penalty because it's much cheaper. Because they just can't afford these high costs. And you have to remember, many people are losing work today. Many people have part-time jobs. They just don't have the funds to pay for health insurance. Now, very interestingly, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, decided to look into Obamacare. And they went undercover. And what they found was that pretty much anyone who signs up for Obamacare, they'll receive a taxpayer-funded incentives without having to worry about details like proving citizenship, identifying or showing people that you're in a low income bracket. In fact, the study found that every single one of its 15 fictitious Obamacare applicants, well, they were actually approved for coverage despite intentional applications omissions. They put in fictitious identification, they gave fictitious citizenship documentation, and all the applicants were approved for federal subsidies, which totaled $60,000 per year. So they had 15 fictitious applications. The federal or state-based marketplaces approved coverage at a time of application, specifically 14 applicants for qualified health plans and 1 application for Medicaid. Each of the 14 for the health plans, they were also approved for the APTC subsidies. These subsidies totaled around $5,000 on a monthly basis, or about $60,000 annually. And when you look at the application, they didn't show that they were citizens. They faked it, or they put, yes, we were. And they just made up these applications. Everything was fake, phony, and false. And we can see right now, this system was designed to accept anybody into the system with no checks, because they just want people on the system. That's it. Because the entire system was based on the entire population being on Obamacare. Remember, the health insurance companies created this bill. And think about it. They sat around in a room talking about it, saying, listen, we can do this, but we have to have the premiums high. We have to have everyone in this. We need we need a certain number of applicants. We need a certain number of people paying in. And if we don't get this, it's not going to work. So the government said, you know what we can do? We can put a penalty on this. This will force people into it because they don't want to be penalized. So they created this penalty, and of course, it's completely unconstitutional, but they kind of blackmailed the judge. He said it was constitutional, then flew off for 2 weeks, so no one could question his decision. But we can see right now, their plan, it's not going as planned. So don't worry, they have a rider in there that allows the insurance companies to be bailed out if things don't go their way. And of course, the insurance companies created that. So we can see right now their entire plan was just to get everyone in there. Illegals, it doesn't matter. Just come on in. You'll get this. They want everyone on the system. That was the point of this. Now, very interestingly, we know that Obama waited for after the elections to create his executive order for illegal immigrants, allowing them to jump over the border. Once they're in the United States, they can stay in the United States, and they're shipped off to different cities. And they keep saying there's no way to control the border. There's no way we can do this. Well, we know that Jay Johnson was out in Turkey, who created a wall with surveillance to control the border. And Mexico, well, they're building a wall on its southern border to keep illegal immigrants out. Mexico, between Central America and Mexico. But what's really interesting about all of this is that the United States is sending $75 million in equipment and training to help with the building of the wall and for surveillance. So the U.S. taxpayers are building the Mexican wall between Mexico and Central America. But here in the United States, they're saying it's impossible. That's ridiculous. Why would you want that? But we're paying for it in Mexico. That seems very hypocritical to me. Now, Obama has come out and he is setting a timetable to lift Myanmar sanctions. And of course, as we know, he continually tells us that sanctions don't work, but he continually places sanctions on North Korea. He places sanctions on Russia. He places sanctions on Syria. He continually does this, and then on the other hand, he tells us, well, we need to lift these sanctions because they really don't work. What he's really doing is he's removing the sanctions where he needs to do business. And what I mean by that, if we look where Myanmar is, it is near China, and it completes the circle where they have each one of the countries surrounding China. So we've had sanctions in this area for 20 years, and Obama said, it's all of a sudden it's time for a change, just like he did with Vietnam. Now, right now, the U.S. will not trade in military equipment. They can't accept military equipment in this country. It is restricted right now. How much do you want to bet that this will be removed in the next couple of days or weeks, just like they did with Vietnam? And then all of a sudden, we're going to see military assets moving into Myanmar. That's exactly what is going to happen. It happened in Vietnam because what they're trying to do is complete the circle. Because we know in the Philippines, they're looking to get rid of the United States. And they need to control that region. Now, out in the Persian Gulf, we see things are heating up in that area. The U.S. is continually whining that Iran is harassing their ships, their planes. And really think about it. The U.S. is in their territory. The U.S. is sailing their ships or flying their planes near their borders. And yes, they're going to be sending boats out. They're going to be sending out planes to inspect what's going on. If Iran was in the Gulf of Mexico or off the coast of New York doing the same thing, the United States would do the same thing. So really, who's harassing who? Because it seems that the U.S. is harassing Iran, provoking Iran. And right now what we're seeing is that the U.S. is going to be deploying drones in the Persian Gulf to keep an eye on Iran. And we can see that they're going to be creating new facilities for the Navy's MQ-4C Triton drones. And this is going to be stationed at Aleppo Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. Now, these new drones, the MQ-4s, they can fly 8,200 miles without needing to refuel. They can fly at altitudes of about 60,000 feet, and they can fly at a maximum speed of about 360 miles per hour. And these drones can spend up to about 30 hours in the year, 30 hours in the air on every mission. They have powerful cameras, radars, they can track ships, and they can also track land targets. So we can see already the United States is preparing, moving more military assets into this region to start something else. Remember, the entire goal here was to get into Syria, of course, Libya, Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq, Sudan, get into Syria, then move into Iran. And it's starting to look like that they're moving in that direction. We see the United States signed the largest ever military aid deal with Israel, and all of a sudden, the U.S. put out a travel advisory for the Golan Heights in Israel. So it looks like something is about to happen in that region. We see the Syrian army, they are withdrawing from the Aleppo area. They're creating a demilitarized zone to bring in humanitarian aid, have a corridor so they can bring in all of this. So they're removing their artillery. We see Turkey right now. Turkey is preparing for a third phase of an Aleppo offensive. And we can see what they're doing is they're creating a buffer zone. They're clearing out the area. They don't need the Islamic State right now. They're cleaning up after them, getting rid of any type of evidence whatsoever. We know we have U.S. troops in there. The French have troops in there. We see right now that Turkey is in there cleaning up and clearing the area and creating these zones. And all of this is going to be used for the major assault that they're going to have coming up very soon. Because this is all the United States has left. Because this ceasefire deal, well, it doesn't seem like it's going too well. Because Russia right now has accused the United States of failing to fulfill its obligation under the truce agreement. They're saying that the Syrian forces, the Russian forces, they stopped firing, but the moderate rebel groups, the terrorist groups, they haven't. They're continually fighting. They have not stopped. And what's very interesting is that we know the United States wanted to keep this ceasefire peace deal a secret because there's sensitive data inside. Well, Russia is saying, you know something? It'd be better if we published the entire ceasefire documents. This way, there'll be no question of what was agreed upon. Now, of course, the United States doesn't want this to happen, but France is out there. They are saying that they should receive the text of the ceasefire deal so they understand what the deal is about and that there's no confusion as to who's to be targeted on the ground. So it looks like the United States once again, and I'm not talking about the people of the United States, I'm talking about the government, who wants war, who wants to push war to keep their system going, to keep their way of life moving forward. And all of this is for complete and total control. Now they're backed into a corner once again, because now Russia and the coalition forces are saying, you know something, we should have this document. Why don't we have it? And we know the United States doesn't want to produce this because there's information in there they don't want let out. And this is going to pose a problem. We're already seeing the Pentagon out there saying that no, Russia and the U.S., we did not discuss joint military operations in Syria whatsoever. Whatever John Kerry said is completely wrong. And we know that the neocons, they don't want to work with Russia. They want Russia out of Syria. They want Assad out of Syria. They want Syria. Then they want to go into Iran. And we can see right now that there's a lot of confusion around this ceasefire, and they should publish this document so everyone is clear on the terms. We see the U.S. military right now, they're shifting surveillance aircraft, military assets from all other different regions around the world, and they're bringing it into Syria. They're going to increase the number of intelligence analysts in Syria, and they're doing this so they can identify and approve different airstrikes in Syria. So what I see happening here is they're bringing all of this in for whatever offensive they're planning here, because we know that the ceasefire is a stall tactic. We know that Turkey is clearing out a buffer zone. We know they're going to use this zone to launch the attack. This has been in the planning stages for a very long time. The Brookings Institute planned this out, and they're following it to the T. I mean, they might have had to take other roads to get there and curve around and get to this point, but they're following it, which means they're going to be building up the military forces in this area. They already have 2 bases. The French has a base that they built in Syria without the permission of the Syrian government, and they're going to use this to launch a major offensive when the time is right. And it looks like we are approaching that time. We see out in Germany, they are worried about lone wolf terrorist attacks in Europe that are ordered and orchestrated through social media like Facebook, WhatsApp. And the reason why they're saying this is they want control of these apps. They want control of these social media platforms. Because what they're saying really doesn't make any sense. They're saying that they're sending encrypted messages through these systems, and they are getting prepared and ready to plan attacks in Germany. Well, if they're encrypted, how are they reading it? How do they know? And let me just say, if these terrorist groups really wanted to do something, they're not going to go through social media. They're going to create other methods. They're going to create their own encryption. Again, this is a way to control what people are saying, doing in a country. And we know that these terrorist attacks, this is all an inside job. I mean, think about it. The Islamic State, they're pretty much gone. I mean, they were a strong force when they were operational in Syria and Iraq, but they're losing land like crazy. There are really not many of them left compared to what they were like before. So this whole thing about attacking from these lone wolves, about being radicalized, that story is falling apart. But they're trying to use it to scare people to give up their right to use encryption, their right to privacy, their right to talk to people over the internet without being spied on. And all of this is playing into one thing and one thing only. And that is the collapse of the system, control of the people, moving us to a war. Because like I said, we can see the writing is on the wall. We can see that all these indicators, economic indicators, political indicators, geopolitical indicators, they're all coming together right now. And things are starting to heat up around the world. Countries are taking sides. The Philippines, they're taking a side. We see Russia, China, they're on one side. North Korea on another side. And the coalition forces, they will be taking sides eventually of where they want to be. And we can see right now that this is a tough spot for the United States government central bankers, because they want this war. Because the dollar reserve system, the petrodollar, it's falling apart. Things are rapidly deteriorating very quickly. And we can see they're preparing for this collapse. And they're getting ready to go, to make their move. And I think the time frame for them doing this is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually, they're going to get the green light to go. And once they go, things are really going to accelerate. We're going to see horrific things. People are not going to know what's happening, especially when we're in the first phase of the collapse. Think about back in 2008, when things started to fall apart, how people were losing their jobs, people didn't know how they were going to survive. I remember the stories on the TV where they showed people living in their houses because they didn't want to leave. They couldn't pay for their electric. They stayed in their houses. Candles were lit all around their house. They didn't have the money to pay for food, electric, heat, air conditioning, but they didn't want to leave their homes. And on the other hand, they had people in California saying, you know something, we're out of here. They left all their furniture, they left all their belongings, and they just left the homes. So when this hits this time, this situation is going to be much, much worse. And we're going to see, during the first phase, capital controls, credit freeze up, bail-ins. We're going to see deliveries come to a screeching halt. Food is going to go scarce in the stores. People are going to lose jobs. People are going to be very nervous. And this is why everyone needs to be prepared and ready for this. I mean, not just with food, water, a weapon, cash, gold, silver, but you're going to need to be prepared mentally. It's almost like I said, a storm coming, a tornado or a hurricane. And you're hearing it rip apart houses while you're hiding in your house. And you know you could be next. You're in there preparing mentally. It's coming. We prepared all we could. And now we're waiting for it to hit. And we can see that this storm is approaching. And it's gaining speed. The winds are picking up. And the situation is going to get worse and worse before it gets better. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.